more important than that when the world around us is screaming, those are the most important things. I want you to notice this verse in Deuteronomy 4. It says this, watch yourselves carefully. Watch yourselves carefully. Don't what, guys? Don't sin by making idols of any kind. Well, why? Why does God say don't do this? Well, he's trying to say it for our own good. Now, isn't it true that whenever you idolize something, it always disappoints you? Have you ever been in a relationship when you put all your eggs in one basket and you were just like, this is it. This is the most important thing in my life. And yet that person disappoints you? Yeah, idols disappoint us. Not only do they disappoint us, they dominate our lives if we're not careful. You know, it's a good thing to have a great job and a great career, isn't it? But when that comes the primary thing that takes your focus off of God, then it's beginning to dominate you. Now, one more thing. Idols deform you. Now, this isn't on your outline, but when you are looking at an idol, when you are worshiping something other than God, it takes the place of God in your life. When you do that, it causes you to not become the person of God that you want to be. When you're doing that, it causes your family to have the difficulties that the world brings along, and God says, don't do that. I want you to worship me only. Now, take a look at this. The second principle is this. Worship only God. Okay? You might want to write that down. I think it's on your outline. Worship only God. Well, how does this apply to our families? How does it apply to our families? Have you ever heard anybody say, I worship the ground she walks on? You guys ever hear somebody say that? Some of you guys have said that about some woman. God says this, worship only me. Now, worship means this. You might want to write this down. Worship means to give my highest love and devotion. When you're worshiping God, it means that you're giving him your highest love and devotion. And the Bible says that only God is worthy of that. Not any career, not anything, not any person. Now, unfortunately, the sad reality of it all is this. Hi, honey. How are you? Good to see you this morning. I haven't seen my wife in months in the service because she's been working in the children's department. Here's my plug for the children's department. We need some help in the children's department. Good to see you, hon. I don't worship the ground she walks on, although I do love her.
You should.
Let me go back to my message. Sorry. A little distracted there. Most people turn the things that God gives us into the thing that we love the most, right? Xbox is fun, isn't it? If you got an Xbox, it's fun. But it does not take the place of God. Having a relationship is great, but it does not take priority over your relationship with God. Now, I want you to notice this verse in Romans 1:25. It says this, instead of believing what they knew was the truth about God, they deliberately chose to believe lies. Now, I know this would never happen to anybody here, but I want you to think about this. It says this, so they worship the things God made, but not the Creator himself, who is to be praised forever. Do you know anybody like that? You know, have you ever met anybody like that? They are people who love the things that God made instead of loving God. You know, there's a lot of people who are not here at church today, right? There's a lot of people who are in the mountains. They're doing recreation, right? I've said it before, but they're out wrecking creation. And creation becomes the thing that they love the most rather than coming to church to hear about God or to worship God. Now, it blows my mind when I think about all the crazy things that people worship. I just wanted to share a couple of these things with you this morning. People will worship nature. You've heard that, right? I've met people from Wicca and those who follow that, the witchcraft, white witchcraft, and they worship nature. Radical environmentalists worship trees, right? Right? They worship trees and nature. There's other people who worship the pyramids. There's other people who worship good luck charms, their horoscopes, the stars, the astrology, the crystals, and they're looking for guidance in every direction instead of coming to the Creator himself. And God says, don't do that. Don't worship these things because they're always going to disappoint. Now, what I want to talk about today is what are some of the idols that we might have in our life? What are some of the things that we're putting ahead of God, maybe even ahead of God working in our family today? So I want you to be thinking about that. I said that there were 4 American idols, and one of the things that we're going to be doing to look at this is looking at the life of a man named Solomon. Now, Solomon was a king. How many of you know who his father was? Who can tell us who his father was? Yell it out. David, right. King David, right? That was his father. He was the son of a king. He became the king. That meant he get to set the agenda, right? It's good to be the king. You get to set the agenda. Mm-hmm. He was the one who got the honor of building God's temple. David wanted to build God's temple, but because there was so much bloodshed on David's hands, God said, no, I have something more for your son. I want him to build my temple where I will dwell. Now, he was the wisest of all kings before and after him. Well, why? Why is that? Well, one day, God came to Solomon and he said, what is it that you want, Solomon? What is it that I can do for you, Solomon? Now, wouldn't that be great if God came to you and said, write your own check. Whatever you want, I'm going to give it to you. Well, he came to Solomon one day and he said, I'm going to give you whatever you want. And Solomon said, because I'm a young man, God, what I need more than anything, more than wealth, more than all of that stuff, what I need the most is I need wisdom on how to govern these people, how to lead them in the direction that you want us to go. And so God gave him wisdom beyond all measure. And the Bible says that there was no king smarter than him before, and there would be no king smarter than him in the future. And that includes today. And so Solomon was the wisest king of all. And God told him, as long as you follow me, I'm going to bless your family. Okay, now get this. God tells Solomon, as long as you follow me, Solomon, I'm going to bless your family. And there's never going to come a day, Solomon, when one of your descendants is not going to sit on the throne of Israel. Notice that. He says, as long as you do what I want, Solomon, I'm going to make sure that your family is taken care of and that you guys will lead my people. Well, unfortunately, Solomon couldn't keep his end of the bargain, and God removed his family from leadership. Idols were his downfall. How many of you ever heard the phrase, it's wise to learn from your mistakes? You guys heard that? Yeah, it is wise to learn from your mistakes. But it's wiser to learn from the mistakes of others, isn't it? Some people are like, I just got to live that out. Well, you don't. You have to look at the people who did it before you, the people who made the same dumb mistakes that you're about to do, and you can learn from them. And so what we're going to do is look at Solomon's life, look at 4 things that he put ahead of God, which were ultimately his downfall. Now, look at your outline. 4 American idols. Number 1 is this. Solomon idolized knowledge. Knowledge and wisdom. God said, Solomon, whatever you want, I'll do for you. And he said, I want wisdom to lead your people. And God said, because you asked for that, I'm going to give it to you more than any before you and more than any after you. And it became his downfall. Now, I want you to notice this on your outline. Ecclesiastes 1:13 through 17, he says this about his life. I devoted myself to search for understanding and to explore by wisdom everything being done in the world. He said, I'm going to check out what's going on in the world. And it's good to have curiosity. It's good to know that. But I want you to notice this. I said to myself, I am wiser than any before me. Kind of pride stepping in there. You see that, right? I'm wiser than any before me. I have greater wisdom and knowledge than any of them. He said, I worked hard to distinguish wisdom from foolishness. And so Solomon he's so caught up in this idea of knowledge and wisdom. That's the be-all, end-all of life. And the reality is, guys, that in the universities and in the secular schools, what they teach you is that God doesn't exist. And that evolution is true. And yet, without any scientific evidence for such a thing, they say that the universe just happened. Anthony Flew was one of the leading atheists in the world today. He would go around and he would debate Christians and he would tell Christians why they were wrong. And for 80-something years of his life, he went around and he started doing this. Last year, Anthony Flew said this statement. He says, there has to be something more than what science is telling us.